Well, in March 1918, there's the German, the spring offensive of 1918. Elsie and Mairi get caught up on that very dangerous time. And they are in the most dangerous part of the Western Front at this point. They've managed to hold the Germans back, tanks can't get through, and really it was a very brilliant strategy to keep the Germans behind the water, because they couldn't get their tanks through, the water was so deep. That was the only way of keeping the Germans at bay at that part of the Western Front. But in March 1918, there was a huge bombardment of arsenic shells which made their way into the dugout of Elsie and Mairi. I'd just like to read something from my book about how close they were to being killed. For 2 days, Elsie and Mairi were caught in the thick of it. The shelling was so intense you couldn't hear yourself think. Mairi remembered, the whole place went up. The whole line was one long roar. It went on non-stop. The women hid in their dugout with their orderlies, the wounded and their pets, and every sense was assaulted by the continuous bombardment. We slept in tiny bunks. You could touch the walls all round, and the passageway where we received the wounded had been entirely blown in with shell fire. There were slanting cuts for air, which we stuffed with our aquascutum coats, so there were shell splinters coming in from all directions. In the early hours of the morning of the 17th of March 1918, Elsie and Mairi were nearly killed in a gas attack. Since poison had been used for the first time in April 1915, Elsie and Mairi had been equipped with gas masks, but until now they had no need for them. In the days leading up to the 17th, they'd worn their masks as a precaution, but they didn't like wearing them. We were nearly dead with it because you pinched your nose so hard you breathed through a tube which dribbled down your chest. They'd taken the masks off just before the Germans lobbed a salvo of arsenic gas shells into the broken down passageway, which led straight back into their position. Even though no one was wearing their masks, Elsie and Mairi, the doctor, Gabriel the orderly, and the current patient survived, but one of their drivers was killed. The gas made their heads swim. They vomited and coughed and gasped for air. The terrier Shot, who had been so efficient at dealing with the rats and had wandered into so many photographs, died. A month later, Elsie, who was frail and almost able to stand, described the scene to a journalist from the Daily Express from her nursing home in Chelsea, which is this photograph here. She told him, "The firing was so heavy that I got out of my bunk and said to Miss Chisholm, 'We'd better dress. There are sure to be wounded.' While dressing, I heard a shell burst outside our dugout, and a moment later I found Gabriel, our soldier orderly, lying on the floor. I rushed up to him to see if he were wounded, and suddenly I felt as if a rope had been fastened round my neck. I could not breathe and was utterly helpless. Miss Chisholm was rolling on the floor. My little dog Shot, who'd been with me for 3 years, came up and looked at me with wondering eyes. He licked my hands and then died. I don't think that ever before I felt I hated the enemy, but ever since my dog was gassed, I've longed to kill a German." So that's the moment when Elsie turned her heart against the Germans. Astonishingly, the pets, the cats survived, Gabriel survived, the patient survived, of course Elsie and Mairi survived. But they were wounded and they were sent back to England to recover. Elsie was more badly wounded and she actually didn't ever return to the first aid post. But after a period of convalescence here in London, Mairi was very much at a loose end, couldn't wait to get back to what she regarded as home, that terrible place on the Yser front, living in those awful conditions. For her, that was home, that's where she wanted to be. And she was frustrated and desperate to be there when the war ended, whenever that was going to happen. So she's kind of kicking her heels a bit. She goes back to the post. She opens it up on her own. She gets a couple of new orderlies to help her. Elsie never goes back there, but Mairi does. And Mairi is gassed again for the second time. And astonishingly, she survived.